Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Tuesday night's live in my Facebook group. And welcome if you're watching it, catching up later on YouTube. So it's the middle of April, post-Easter. Hope everyone had a happy Easter. And it's Stress Awareness Month. So last week, I hope it wasn't all doom and gloom, but what I was trying to do is to raise awareness of the impact of long-term stress when we're exposed to stress on a sort of continuous, chronically long-term basis where we're not paying much attention to all the signs and symptoms and where we're getting stress from and the impact it can have on our body. But today I want to be far more uplifting and proactive and talk about ways that we can proactively manage the stress response and help to calm everything down. Now, when we think about stress, we have two arms of what we call the autonomic nervous system. So we have the one arm of the autonomic, which means it's automatic. We have no control over it. One arm is known as the sympathetic, which is the one we really know about, the fight or flight, the stress response, the one that kicks in when it's trying to protect us from danger, whether it's slamming your foot on the brakes if you're about to, let's just say, hit a pheasant that's on the road, to experiencing worries about financial situation, an argument with a loved one, somebody who may be long-term sick. All of these stress things, they create this stress response in the body that in the short term will enable this short-term adrenaline release to protect us from danger. And I spoke last week about the ways it does that in the body. But long-term, when things continue and we get stressors from different aspects of our lives, then it starts to contribute to the longer term release in the body of cortisol, and this is what becomes more damaging. So that's the autonomic arm of the nervous system that's known as the sympathetic. Sounds like it should be relaxing, but it really isn't. The opposite of that, the other one, the other arm to this autonomic nervous system, and as I said, it's autonomic, will be in one or the other, is known as the parasympathetic, and what it is commonly known as is rest and digest. Now, the body is meant to be in parasympathetic rest and digest the majority of the time. This stress response, fight or flight, should only kick in really occasionally, short term, and switch off again. But unfortunately, with modern lifestyles, that just doesn't happen because of the impact of stressors in our life, whether it's emotional or trauma, etc., that we all know about, has this long-term impact on our health and doesn't get turned off. But the good news is that we can switch, we can make the switch ourselves if we are really, really focused on it. Now, of course, if there are some specific, very traumatic events going on, then it's going to be difficult for that to happen. I'm talking more about the things that create stresses in the body, this sort of general busyness in our modern lives, that we can switch off, and we can switch from the fight or flight into the rest and digest if we follow some simple things to calm the body down, to restate the body into this calming atmosphere that switches off the cortisol response and allows the body to relax. And I just want to talk you through the 5 things that would be my go-tos and are my go-tos in my life that really do help on a day-to-day basis. And what I'd like you to take away from this is to think about the things that you can incorporate into your lives, not just in a proactive way to just generally manage stress, but also to be thinking about these things, to become more aware when you think you're becoming a little bit more uptight, and to then go into incorporating these things there and then to calm everything down. So as usual, in no particular order, I'm going to start with deep abdominal breathing. Now, if you practice yoga, doing things like Pilates, you will understand about deep abdominal breathing. But what we do know is that when we practice deeper breathing, we definitely move into the parasympathetic state. Now, many times when I meet with my clients, I find that they breathe too shallowly. They're breathing higher up here. And what happens when we breathe shallowly up here is it can create an imbalance between oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. And when we get holding on to too much carbon dioxide, not taking in enough oxygen, it creates anxiety in the body. So we're almost actually adding to the stress response. When we start to breathe more deeply, and by deep abdominal breathing, we're breathing in slower and we're expanding the abdomen, and it allows the diaphragm to move, allows oxygen to be drawn right in deeply to the lungs. And then we breathe out deeply, contracting the abdomen. It allows us to expel that carbon dioxide. And by just focusing on that breathing, just in a simple way, and you can create more complicated ways of doing this, but let's just start simply. Otherwise, I know talking to some of my clients, just trying to think about how to breathe deeply, if you're not used to it, can almost be stressful. So let's keep it simple. Trying to focus on breathing in for 4 deeply and breathing out for 4 deeply, and thinking about the breathing really does create that sense of calm in the body that we're looking for. Now, my second one on the list is what we call emotional freedom technique, commonly known as tapping. Now, I've done 1-day training in emotional freedom technique. I'm not a fully trained practitioner. I don't advertise that I can offer this to my clients as a standalone practice, but I have enough awareness to explain the benefits of this. And whilst I may generally show them how to do it, I will often send them off either to a practitioner or to a very good website to show people how to do it. But this is about meridian points, acupressure points that link to Chinese meridians. And it's known that by tapping on these points, it starts to send a sense of calm throughout the body. It tells the body it is safe to relax. And people who practice this, if they're feeling particularly stressed, and think about scoring how they're feeling by doing a few sequences of this, not over a really long period of time, can really notice that the score comes down from maybe an 8 out of 10 to say a 4 out of 10 by repeating it. And you repeat gently on certain meridian points, starting on the outside of the hand below the little finger, and you tap around the inside of the eyebrow, around the outside of the eyebrow, underneath the eye, underneath the nose, underneath the lips, tapping on the collarbone, under the arm by the bra line for a lady, roughly there, always finishing on the top of the head, and you breathe in and out. Now, you can work with a practitioner, and I would recommend it if you really want to investigate this, because if you've got a particular thing that is causing you distress, then they can teach you a sequence of what to say to calm everything down. But you can actually practice things by saying some very simple sequences. And the website I would recommend you look at is Nick Ortner, Ortnor. Yeah, that's how you spell it. And the website is The Tapping Solution. He is American, but he's very well known and has released books and has a video on his website that you can look at. And I'm sure if you looked at YouTube, you'd find a lot of other sites to look at EFT or tapping as well. I love it. I think it's really, really effective. But with all these things, it's finding what works for you. And I appreciate if you sit in the office, you may not want to be doing all this sort of tapping away, although you could take yourself off to a quiet space if you're in an office to do this. Certainly something that you can do when you are at home in a quiet place. Now, the third thing on my list is just thinking about stillness. We are just so busy rushing around that we forget to be still and to pause in our lives. And this is where we can think about building in meditation, visualization, anything that is going to make us pause and calm. Again, often links back to the breathing. You can find some fantastic apps around meditation, or you could work with a practitioner around or attend classes to help you meditate. And many people get into a real practice of incorporating meditation first thing in the morning, after work, at lunchtime, etc. Many people will start the day and go into a deep meditation state for up to 20 minutes. Experienced people will do meditation for much longer than that. And it doesn't just create calm. It actually is shown to build this sort of resilience against stress, build strength and resilience against stress. So not only can it create calm when you're feeling stressed, but if you practice this long term, it helps to create and build that resilience against stress longer term. So this stillness and pausing and doing less is extremely effective to help calm that stress response. Now, number 4 is what I call movement, and I've deliberately labeled this movement and not exercise. Too often we focus on strenuous exercise, and if you're feeling stressed and have a lot of stress going on in your life, the last thing I recommend is going to do strenuous cardio type exercise that is actually going to create a stress response in the body, the very thing we're trying to turn off. What I'm talking about here is movement, and moving around more will actually help to calm the body. Certainly when we're moving, it can take our mind off the very thing that's creating the stress. But the movement alone is actually going to be quite calming to the body. Of course, you could go and do a yoga class, you could go and practice Tai Chi. It might just be a simple walk at lunchtime. It might be going out into the garden and doing a bit of gardening. It might be dancing, something like that. But that movement is going to be very, very helpful to calm everything down. And I really recommend you think about moving more anyway. I've talked about movement for other reasons to do with health, but certainly as part of building this into your day-to-day practices is going to be really helpful for moving from the sympathetic to this parasympathetic state of mind. And the final one, as part of my 5 top naturopathic practices to calm the stress response in the body, is relaxing hobbies. I called it hobbies, but actually it's just anything that's going to relax you. How often do you pick up the phone and phone a friend, for example? Are you reading a book, and not one that's a thriller, for example, or something, a horror story, but something that's going to take your mind off the very thing that could be stressing you and make you focus your attention on something that will calm you down? Having a bath, gardening again, going for a walk, they all add up to the same thing. It's going to be very, very calming. It could be listening to some music. I know when I used to work in an office and I'd be uptight and stressed coming home often, it was the one time I'd put classical radio on my car radio when I was driving home, because I just find it so relaxing. You know, it wasn't time for listening to sort of pumped up music. You want that relaxing, calming music. So it's lots of different ways that you can do these things. And what I would say here, I'd really like to make the point that we are all busy. It's very easy to say we don't have the time to do these things. This goes back to creating habits and finding the time to build it in. We do have the time. We could spend less time watching TV and more time building in these stress relieving, mindful type practices into your day-to-day life that is going to really build huge benefits into your body, into your state of mind, into your overall health, for your digestion, whether it's your blood pressure, whether it's weight, because being stressed all the time can lead to weight gain, whatever it may be. It is so worth looking at your diary and finding these 10 minutes, 5 minutes slots during the day, maybe setting a timer on your phone and making yourself go off and do one of these things. Finding the things that resonate with you that you think you'd like to incorporate into your practice, and do build them in, because your body will really thank you for it. May not be today or tomorrow, but longer term, it can only bring huge benefits to your overall state of health, mental, emotional, and physically. So I hope you found that useful tonight. I will be back next week focusing more on IBS, because I think it's also IBS Awareness Month. So I will definitely be focusing my attention for the rest of the month on that through April 23. So thank you so much for watching. If you've got any topics you'd like me to talk about, do drop them into my posts and say on Facebook group, if you're on my Facebook group, let me know what it is you'd like me to talk about. I'll make sure I build that in going forward. Have a lovely week ahead. Do practice these things and let me know how you get on. Thanks, everybody. Bye.